Hi, welcome to Rising Tide Riders. We're very glad to be back here at Channel 99. And we are a group of writers and published authors who we meet weekly in Harwich Center at the Brooks Free Library. And we're bringing you a little glimpse of what it's like to work inside a writing group. I'm Elizabeth Moysan. I'm the facilitator of the group. And I'd like you to meet the panel. This is Joan Hennessy on the far right, Claudia Dallaire, Rachel Crosby, Bill Richmond, and Edmund, I was going to say O'Brien, Richmond. Robinson. Okay, sorry. Anyway, we've all come tonight. We've got reading, and we hope to get some discussion and some critique in. Each author has about 10 minutes, and we hope that you will learn something while we're also learning something from each other. So let's get started. Joan.
Rachel.
Rachel.
Sorry, Rachel. Okay. Okay, let me just set the timer. Okay, Rachel.
How to get the cat out of the bag. It's another blistering day in this hell of a city. Our battalion has been 3 weeks prying this otherwise worthless collection of dirty, decaying buildings from the slimy grip of the Ankagori horde. Today, finally, they're in screeching retreat, forced into the deadly boiling radioactive dreadlands. We're deaf not going after them. May they burn and char and have their corpses picked clean by the vulgar Vultura. But this cesspool of a city, aka Bon Carne, is still not ours. The Ankagari have left behind countless IEDs, miscellaneous building booby traps, and more than a few of their android horrors. What's evil about the androids is that they have human heads, with brains intact, grafted onto projectile-proof, exotic alloy bodies. But even worse, the heads come from soldiers in our battalion who were captured, beheaded, and then, once integrated with the machine bodies, brainwashed into dedicating their pitiful existence to killing their old military mates. We call these androids bad buddies, or BB for short, because they can call to you in voices of old friends. So yeah, I'm augmented too, though my body's still all human. Got a sleek exoskeleton, and my brain has been tweaked to strategize and calculate like an autonomous military-grade drone. There's 34 of us junk doctors in the battalion. We cure cities of the crap the Ankagari leave behind. Oops. Correction on the 34. HQ says Callous Cal got dusted. When I say dusted, I mean blown to motes by a bad buddy's atomizer. Now only 33 of us. What's really bad, Cal owed me credits. Simple fact, a junk doctor can't stand against a bad buddy in a head-to-head blowout. Hey, kind of funny, yes? Head-to-head? Because the only way to take down a bad buddy is a headshot. If you don't get the headshot off, you're toasted bits of semi-organized matter. I've been assigned to clear a 10-block square of grubby buildings. I've been given only 3 days to complete the job. It's day one, and I'm buzzing along, making all the right moves at all the right times, diffusing traps before they get me. One setup did slow me down. It was a little kid, maybe 7 or 8, tied to a chair with his eyes gouged out and his eardrums pierced. He was crying to break your heart. Did I mention the Ankagari are evil to the core? I scanned the kid and didn't detect any tripwires or laser activators, but I knew he was dangerous. And I couldn't end his suffering with a bullet because its death throes could release something seriously nasty. So I transmitted a vid of the kid with descriptive text to HQ and left him for the super specialists. By the afternoon, I'm soaked in sweat despite my climate-controlled armor. I creep into a house 2 stories and furnished kind of nice, like people of taste had lived there. I go through the downstairs without incident. Through the kitchen window, I see a backyard green oasis with plants and a water fountain. I decide to break there and cool off after I check upstairs. Nothing but corpses on the second floor. A man and a woman and a couple of kids without the usual nauseating Angkagari desecrations. Maybe they suicided. A lot of the city's residents took their own lives rather than be used by the Angkagari as bait or worse. I'm about to step into the backyard, anxious to take off my helmet and dunk my head in the cool water, when I notice an oddly shaped shadow falling in from the left, from a part of the yard I can't see. I freeze for a good 5 minutes. I'm about to relax when the shadow moves, and I know, bad buddy. I sub-vocalize a request for help to HQ. Not possible is what I get back. This one is all mine. I use a stealth vid bot around the door frame, and sure enough, a BB is sitting at a table. It's back to me. There's a bottle of wine on the table, and I get a chill when I watch the BB lift a glassful to its head and then put it down empty. This is new. No one has reported the BB still did anything human-like, and I can't figure out where the wine went when it drank it. What's even weirder is there are 2 glasses, like it was waiting for someone. I've got a dilemma. My HUD tells me there's only a 7% chance of hitting the 2mm slit at the back of the buddy's helmet. That compares to an 85% kill probability if I can get the buddy to turn toward me and fire before it sees me. If it sees me first, I have a 0% chance of living. We're talking half-second difference between life and death. A gust of hot wind blows a brown paper bag across the yard. The BB glances toward it, but not enough for me to get a shot. I sit tight. A minute later, a cat appears from beneath the bush, trots to the paper bag, and after sniffing it, crawls inside, like cats like to do. Starts humping around, making the bag crackle. The BB's head turns to watch this bit of feline nonsense, but again, the angle isn't enough. I need at least a full profile to get in a kill shot. Then I get a brilliant idea. I feel through my pockets to find the 2-inch square of blue tile I picked up as a souvenir. I've got to throw it perfectly, so it spooks the cat and gets the BB to really turn its head for that critical second I need. My exoskeleton whips the tile so it hits the bag, and the cat screeches and shoots out of the bag and disappears out of sight to the right. Then we're sort of slow-mo. BB turns 3/4 round to watch the cat, and I slide into the doorway, keeping my profile low as my gun auto-targets its face. I'm pulling the trigger when I see the BB's visor is up, and I recognize the face. It's Scoozy, my lover of 6 months ago before she went MIA in another grubby city. My trigger finger freezes. In the next second, my weapon explodes and I'm knocked flat in my back. I'm alive, but I can't move. Scoozy looms over me, then yanks my helmet off. Her face grimaces into something like a smile. She touches my lips almost tenderly as she pulls out a big, serrated knife. It's the kind they use for beheading.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. One of well, sort of an unspoken rule we have in our group is that the content of whatever has been presented is not up for discussion. So if you have a subject like Edmund is going to have, which is topical, we have a tendency maybe to have a discussion about that topic, but we're going to stick to the writing, to the art and science of writing. And in the case of Rachel, who is our fantastic fantasizer, I guess I could say that. Once an animal, for example, says an English word, speaking a word, you can do anything you want. And Rachel has pulled out all the stops on this one. You know, the content is excellent. I mean, it really carries us along, and I was wondering how to get the cat out of the bag when this was going to work into the story, and it works very well, very well. I had one thing I saw. I'm about to step into the backyard, anxious to take off my helmet, and I know the guy is under a lot of pressure, and he is anxious, but people often say anxious when they mean eager.
Could be eager, yeah.
So I mean, I questioned whether I should say this because,
No.
I mean, God, the guy's...
I changed the word from something else, and anxious, you're right, eager sounds better.
Well,
Yeah,
it's just as often, people often use one in place of the other. Yeah.
good choice. Good.
Okay, anybody else have any thoughts?
I did. The word, the first paragraph on the second page, maybe they suicided. Now, I know this is supposed to be very colloquial style, but that's just blatantly making a verb out of a noun, right?
Yeah, I did a lot of that in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's kind of this particular individual's vernacular.
Yeah.
But people are doing that a lot all the time anyway.
I know.
Oh, okay.
Time's up.
Well,
Oh,
Can
Bill, yes.
The paragraph that starts out, it's day one and I'm buzzing along, making all the right moves. In there, it seems to me, and I'm not sure, but in there it seems like you changed the tense. He was crying. I
Well-
scanned the kid and didn't detect any tripwires, and I couldn't end his suffering with a bullet, etc. It just, as you were reading it, it just seemed like somehow the tense changed. Because the next one is, by the afternoon, I am soaked with sweat.
yeah, I did jump back and forth.
Well,
So I just
even it says
wanted
one
to mention
setup
that.
did slow me down. It was a little kid. I mean, if you are talking in the present tense, it's day one, and I am buzzing along.
Yeah.
You could even change "I was a little kid" to
It
a
is
little
a little kid.
It was a little kid. Not it was. It's a
It
little
should
kid.
be, it
and
is
just
a
plain
little
a little kid. Start with a. Take out the verb to be altogether.
Yeah, that's true.
A little kid. maybe
Anyway, I
sitting
just
down.
wanted to mention
Yeah.
that it seems
Good
like the
catch.
tenses.
Okay, anybody want to
Next up.
squeeze in under the wire? You don't, huh? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Edmund is next, and like I said, his topic is topical. And as it happens, we, as a group, are all of one thought about this, but we try not to, as a rule, talk about the person's choice of writing. And whatever you want to write is okay with us, even if we disagree, which in this case we don't, or in the case of Edmund's book, we all have our thoughts and opinions. So, Edmund, listen, give a little background on what that is, if you would be so kind.
All right. I'm minister of a church in Chatham, and I've been asked to do a little bit more commenting on issues. So a great letter came across in the Cape Cod Times that I thoroughly disagreed with. So I used that as an occasion to write an op-ed piece, and they were nice enough to publish it. So this is.
Excuse me, add a little bit more of your background.
Oh yes,
please.
before I was a minister, I was a attorney for 20 years. I did a lot of work with the ACLU. So I'm familiar with the basic outlines of the Constitution. This is called, there is no constitutional right of armed rebellion. David Maxco of Brewster has a typical misreading of the Second Amendment when he says its purpose was to enshrine a right of armed rebellion against the government, Letters 119. Quite the opposite. First, as to language. The militia protected by that amendment must be well regulated, quote unquote. This is not just clubs of gun hobbyists organized block by block. It was intended to describe military forces subject to the control of the government at some level. This is demonstrated clearly by the history of the amendment. From 1781 until the Constitution was ratified in 1789, relations among the 13 rebelling British colonies were governed by the Articles of Confederation. After the defeat of the British, the Continental Army was disbanded, and defense was assumed by the state militias. Some states even had navies. The weakness in the whole military setup under the Articles of Confederation became apparent in Shays' Rebellion in 1787, where many ex-Revolutionary War soldiers, mad because their promised pensions had not been paid, went on a rampage and sacked the courthouse in Springfield, Massachusetts. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts found, to its embarrassment, that it had no military force available to put down this rebellion and was forced finally to hire a private army of mercenaries. The Articles of Confederation proved unsatisfactory in many ways, and the Constitution was drafted in an effort to create a more perfect union. Article 1, Section 8 of that Constitution gave Congress the power to raise money for an army, but for no longer than 2 years, i.e., no standing army. The peacekeeping functions of the military would devolve upon the state militias as expressed in these provisions of that section. 1, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. That's the main body of the Constitution. The Second Amendment followed the next year, and its call for a well-regulated militia was clearly intended to be militias in the service of government, one of whose functions, per the section quoted above, was to, quote, suppress insurrections. This system was put to the test shortly after the new government was formed by the Whiskey Rebellion. Farmers in western Pennsylvania had long been used to converting their corn into liquid form for easier transport to market, and rebelled against the tax on whiskey imposed by the national government in a desperate attempt to raise revenue to pay war debts. With no standing federal army, the new president, George Washington, called on state militias and amassed a corps of 13,000 troops, which never had to fire a shot, as the rebels disbanded in the face of superior firepower. The Second Amendment was supported by the Federalists, proponents of a strong federal government, and the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists, led by Patrick Henry, were suspicious of a federal standing army, and they saw the strong citizen state militia as a political counterweight to federal military power. The last thing these founders would have done would be to enshrine into constitutional law a right of armed rebellion against the government. The right to bear arms has to be read in conjunction with the right to have a well-regulated militia, which is the way all commentators and courts read it until the political push by the NRA began in the 1980s. Private arms keeping is allowed only to those whose private arms are subject to the discipline and orders of the state militia. In the Heller decision of 2008, a 5-justice majority of the Supreme Court overturned 2 centuries of precedent and found in the Second Amendment a protection for a private right to bear arms in the home for use in self-defense. But Heller did not so much as hint at a right to keep or bear arms for use against the government. We are a government of laws, not of people. And no sane law would recognize the right of every person to be a law unto him or herself simply from the possession of a firearm. America was born in revolution, and does have a strong and honorable tradition of political dissent. The First Amendment clearly protects the right to assemble and petition government. But it is an historical mistake to marry this tradition to a right to bear arms against the government.
Yay.
Thank you, Edmund. Well, you know, it's topic aside, it is well written and organized, and it was published in the, you did say that, didn't you? Cape Cod
Yeah.
Times,
Cape
yeah.
Cod Times.
Slightly shorter version was published.
I wondered if there was something added to it that wasn't printed in the paper. Does anybody have any thoughts?
I thought it was very well written and very well organized, very logical. You made your point and reinforced it throughout. The only thing I said, where you have provisions in this section, should there be quotations around those? Quotation marks? Are
Oh,
you
yes, there
quoting?
should
Are
be.
you quoting from the?
There should be. That's actually a quote from the Constitution.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
And
that's the only. It's.
this, at a time, this subject always, you know, when we consider what the founding fathers were facing, an untried form of government, and also having recently rebelled against the major government
Right.
in the world, you don't want it to turn on you and back. So it might be an idea to say that. You don't really here, do you?
No.
I mean, you don't state that this was, our form of government was simply a trial. Nobody really knew how it was going to turn out, and they were sort of making it up as they went along based on.
Right. But I do say the Articles of Confederation proved unsatisfactory.
Right, but it might be interesting also to say that this particular form of government that was being attempted was unique. And I mean, the Articles of Confederation was simply an attempt to unify that didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. But since you don't know what is going to happen, and you're trying and you're putting it together a little at a time, seeing where you are going, what works, what doesn't work, and of course what worked in the 18th century does not necessarily translate now.
Well, that would have to make this a great deal longer, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, it was just a thought.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a thought. I mean, there's nothing to criticize about your writing.
Right.
So
The
there we
writing-
have it.
The writing is very good.
should-
There are no passive sentences making everybody go to sleep. So
Should
you know,
any of
it's a-
these things be italicized, such as the Articles of Confederation?
Well, the Articles of Confederation should probably be italicized because it's the name of the thing. You know,
Yes.
the
I don't think so, but
No?
we could consult the style manual if we need to for that.
yeah. Okay, how about down here at this end of the table? Anybody have any?
It was fabulous.
Oh, okay.
Love the writing.
Would you say that if you disagreed with it?
No, I actually agree in keeping arms for home defense. However, I don't believe in 20 or 30 guns for home defense. One
Well,
is sufficient.
that's,
So, you know,
the-
when you get into people who have a stockpile of weapons, that's no longer home defense.
I,
So, you know, I can see both sides of the coin, but this was beautifully written.
the weakness that I see in the argument is the right to bear arms has to be read in conjunction with the right to have a well-regulated militia, which is the way all commentators and courts read it, until the political push by the NRA began in the 1980s. That needs to be expanded and proven for your argument to be complete.
true, but this is the best you can do in under 600 words.
I
Well,
understand
it's
that.
true, too. For another point of view on the world, we go to our own Joan Hennessy, who's got, is this Edmonds?
As you know, this story is about a young gal, 18-year-old, that goes to New Jersey from New York to sign up for a job on stage, which turns out to be burlesque. And this is in the 50s when young people of 18 were really innocent. Anyway, I'll stop. She meets a young fellow there, not a young, an older, actually an older man, who was homosexual, and some other, interesting characters later on. Nicky and Louie, that's the homosexual, walked 4 blocks to Havermore Hill. Small front yards were terraced off the sidewalk in front of each house. It reminded Nicky of Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. The houses were older and dark looking. It's much nicer over here than in Radigan, Louie. Like humans live here. Radigan is the made-up name for Union City, actually. I know what you mean. All those big boxy buildings and no trees or grass. Make a left here. My house is half a block down that street. Beverly Avenue, okay. When you meet my mother, remember she doesn't speak English. She did understand a little, but after my father died, she gave up on it. Sorry about your father. Oh, he did all right. He was a little older than Mom. Had a successful business, a barber shop. A few blocks away, there are some beautiful homes near the shop. Money. My father was smart that way. You didn't follow in his footsteps? Nah, my brother did, but he was a lousy businessman. He sold the place off. They climbed the brick steps and went through a small porch and past a doorway on the right, where plush furniture was covered in plastic. They went into the dining room. Dickie noticed the vintage furniture, a large table on one side, a tall sideboard near the stairway, all in heavy dark wood. They entered a large kitchen. My room is back here. Back there, I'm sorry. He pointed to a corner of the kitchen. My mother used the lower level only when company comes. Louie leaned over to whisper, not much company these days. Nicky turned to see a woman in black, 5'3". Her eyes were as black as Louie's, her hair nearly white. She carried a small pot of meatballs and sauce. Buongiorno, madre, Louie said. Buongiorno. Mom, I want you to meet my friend Nicky. How do you do, Mrs. Fontana? Piacere. That means nice to meet you, Louie said. Mrs. Fontana spoke quietly. Piuttosto. She says you're pretty. Louie laughed and poked his mother gently. Thank you, Nicky, grazie. Prego, said Mrs. Fontana. Nicky headed for the table near the back windows and turned. Louie's mother had quietly gone upstairs again. Louie could see her confusion. Come on, I have some nice puglisi bread to go with the meatballs. They smell delicious. The two dove into their sandwiches. Upstairs, records of Frank Sinatra filtered down into the kitchen. That's Mom's way of becoming Americanized, Louie said. After lunch, he borrowed his sister's car and drove Nicky past the high school he attended. A well-kept lawn led to a brick and stone building. She remarked that the track and field area was nice. My father was smart. He picked a house on the edge of he made quote marks with his fingers, good neighborhood. What a difference from my school in Queens, New York. We had a deserted-looking lot fenced in. There wasn't much of a program for us either. Louie drove a few blocks into the estate area of town. Manicured front yards, rained, and long driveways led to homes too big for any one family. After the tour, he drove Nicky home. Well, here's your stop. Thank you for lunch today, or should I say grazie. Prego. The next day, I think that may be evening, check it out. The next evening, Nikki walked down a stairway near her room. She dropped coins into the payphone in the hallway. Hello, Mother. Hello, Jean. Her mother refused to call her Nikki. I remember you said you would be off on Thursdays. How are you? Fine. And everyone there? Fine. Your brother Sean is thinking of joining the Navy, and Tom has met a young woman, a teacher. It looks serious. That's nice. Nice? He's your big brother. Nothing more to say? Like what? Jean expected the silence that followed. At times, silences said more than words. Remember I told you I met a nice fellow? I had lunch with him at his house yesterday. Met his mother. Nice lady. They taught me a few Italian words. Really? A little education can't hurt. That's right, Mother. Don't get any ideas about Louis, though. He's older and not interested in women exactly. Fran Doyle did not say anything. Talk about an education, she thought. After the call, Nikki headed for Larry's for a late supper, followed by a visit to several of the neighborhood bars. This is in italics. Your brothers are not giving you anything for Christmas. She wondered why she thought of what her mother said when she was 12. Her mother told her not to buy anything for them. She did anyway.
Thanks, Joan.
Yep.
Nikki is having quite an adventure, and we've got only a small part of it here tonight. One thing, and it's one of those sticky things.
Okay.
It's well, let's see, where they go into the house and they entered a large kitchen, and Louis says, "My room is back there." He pointed to the corner of the kitchen. "My mother uses the lower level only when company comes." Louis leaned over to whisper, well, you need some quotation marks in there. The line, "not much company these days," goes on the same line as Louis leaned over to whisper.
Marked it.
That's not a new paragraph.
Okay. thank
Okay.
you.
And buongiorno is B-O-U-N, giorno, not just B-O-N. I think that's French, isn't it?
No, I
French
picked
is
it up
French.
from the internet
B-O-U-N
on the
in
computer.
Italiano. And I think he would have said mama or mama. Madre is Spanish, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
Madre is Spanish.
I picked it up from the
Did
computer.
they say madre in Italian? Wouldn't he have
That's
said
what I-
mama?
I picked up.
Well,
there.
anyway,
I don't know.
yeah.
I'll
Doesn't
double
matter.
check it. Thank you.
I have two
languages
in my head.
I didn't see anything else. How about you guys down there?
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
I've got one.
Oh, go ahead.
In the second page, halfway down, you've got the line, "Nice, he's your big brother, nothing more to say." Following that, like what Jean expected, the silence that follows. You've been calling her Nikki
Yeah.
in the story up to that point, although her mother calls her Jean, but
Yeah.
you're talking to the reader, and I
Right,
think you
that
should
should
keep
be-
it consistent with calling her Nikki.
Nikki, yeah, good
That's
catch.
what I was going to say. Rats.
And in that same section, I loved that interaction between Nikki and her mother. You can tell that there's a lot of tension between the two of them. A little bit higher up, though, where she says Queens, New York, I think so many people know where Queens is. I don't really know if you have to put New York there, because we're familiar where the story is taking
I
place.
think even though we're familiar, Nikki wouldn't say Queens, New York. She'd just
No,
say Queens.
she'd say Queens, exactly.
And she might even say the section of Queens. Like people, when they're talking about Brooklyn, they would say Flatbush or Canarsie or
Queens
whatever it is,
Village.
without
Yeah.
actually saying Brooklyn. So I think
Exactly.
whatever, what's the thing in Queens? Anyway, you know,
Yeah.
instead of saying, she might not even say Queens, New York. I mean, she'd say, what's the thing in
Queens.
Queens? No,
Yeah.
she would say her section,
Oh, well,
wouldn't she? Where in Queens did she live?
Earlier in the story, she would identify the state, so I can leave that out anyway.
Okay.
Period. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Well, yeah, what's a difference from, what a difference from my school,
Yeah, you
period.
could leave it there.
Yeah, I can leave it there too, which eliminates that whole problem.
But it would, I think it would add some punch if you put a specific location in Queens, like Astoria or something
Or
like that.
Astoria, yeah, or
Yeah.
Ozone Park or something.
Queens Village.
Yeah. But
Queensville?
it's true that
Queens
if you're
Village.
getting dialogue
Village.
between New Yorkers,
Right,
New York is understood.
right.
New Yorkers don't believe there's any other place than New York.
There isn't,
Exactly.
except Cape Cod, actually,
The best.
and Italy, and London.
And I loved on the first page, the furniture covered in plastic.
Oh, that was so
and the
good.
And the mother all dressed in black. Oh, yeah.
Oh, and that she brings down the lunch, but then doesn't stay to consume it with
Exactly.
them. That's,
Yeah.
that's so
It's
typical.
very authentic.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, but where, is there a kitchen upstairs too?
No, I
No.
don't think so.
So she cooked downstairs,
Well-
took it upstairs, and then brought it back downstairs? I'm
So
not
they
sure
are.
about that.
I'm sorry, there is a kitchen upstairs. It's like a double
Oh, okay,
residency,
okay.
Two-family.
yeah.
What is, you know, you explained all the other Italian words. What does prego mean? I know it's a sauce, a spaghetti sauce. Does that mean,
No.
does that mean
means
you're
you're
welcome?
welcome.
It's not so, but, you know, I only know it as a
Then it's in prego, you say ranzoni. Okay, no. Prego means you're welcome.
Okay.
You're getting hungry.
Up. Okay, thank you very much, Joan.
Thank you.
Oh, stop it. Okay. All right, who's next? Oh, Bill. Bill.
Yes, yes, indeed.
A little background if you were.
A little
wanted to
background.
Say something about this.
Well, I wrote this for a 1,500 word competition. And, you know, you try to do something a little different, you know, a little something with a catch to it or something. So I know people write stories that have an author writing about something. So I wrote a story about an author writing about something, a story about an author writing about something. So here it is. The reporter ran toward the great ball of white fire. All that could be seen were blackened ribs of the once majestic spaceship as it plunged to the grassy field. All that could be heard were the screams of people dying. The reporter reached for the pencil behind his ear. "Where's my goddamn pencil?" he shouted. This will never do, thought the author. A reporter wouldn't think of his pencil at a time like that. Something more exciting. The reporter saw a woman staggering away from the wreckage, stumbling, falling, her clothing on fire. He ran to her, smothered the flames with his own body, and held her. "My husband," she whispered. "I don't know. What is your name?" "Countess de Genovese," she managed, then fainted. When help came, the reporter set out to determine the fate of the Count de Genovese. This is good, thought the author. I think I have something going here. There is the sordid history of the Count and the Countess. She is stuck by him despite the numerous infidelities. In order to protect the family name, the reporter will take pity on her and find himself in the eternal triangle. Ah, the juicy possibilities. The magazine will love it. Count de Genovese was dead. It seemed he had stayed behind to help others escape the inferno of what had been the world's greatest Zeppelin. The reporter felt it was his duty to tell the Countess. She lay on a makeshift cot awaiting transport to the hospital. "I am so sorry to report to you, Countess, that your husband, Count de Genovese, has died a hero saving others in this incredible tragedy," the reporter said. looking into her young, extraordinary eyes. She wept and reached for his hand. He held it closely with both of his. A pair of attendants dressed in white came and placed the Countess on a stretcher and carried her away to an ambulance. The reporter returned to the scene of the airship wreckage. There was nothing left but a mass of mangled struts and the odor of burnt flesh. Now what? Thought the author. I've killed off the eternal triangle and left myself with what? Why do I do these things? How am I ever going to write a successful romance story without an eternal triangle? I must find a new hook. The reporter jogged to the area where victims were being treated and transported to area hospitals. Excuse me, but do you know where they are sending the burn patients? Yeah, everybody goes to Lakehurst or Camp Dix. Thanks. I'll drive down to Lakehurst tomorrow morning then. If I don't find her, I'll go on to Camp Dix. There's got to be a story there. Famous Contessa loses husband in heroic effort to save others from inferno. Scratch that. Beautiful young Contessa grieves for heroic husband lost in airship disaster. God, I'll never forget those eyes. I've got to get that story. The reporter requisitioned one of the broken down newsroom cars and got to Lakehurst at about 8 o'clock the next morning. He was in luck. Why, yes, the Countess de Genovese was brought here, a nurse said. She suffered from shock and third-degree burns to parts of her body. Where is she? I was with her. I must speak with her. I'm sorry, but a private ambulance took her away earlier this morning. Ah, that will grab the readers, the author thought. I think I'm onto something here. What? Cried the reporter. When? Where did they take her? Sir, please, one thing at a time. It was an hour ago, and they didn't say where they were going. The reporter sighed. However, I saw the ambulance had New York license plates. Light returned to the reporter's face. That gives me hope, sweetheart. Thanks. He grabbed her and kissed her on the cheek. If the Countess is in New York, I'll find her, he thought. Sitting behind his battered oak desk in the newsroom, the reporter looked up the numbers for all the hospitals in New York City. He tried the major hospitals in Manhattan first, without success. He tried calling the smaller hospitals. Between assignments, he tried the other boroughs, Long Island and New Jersey. Of course, it couldn't be easy to find her, thought the author. I need to fill out the 1,250 words, and I need a little suspense. Sheesh. He started north. On the fourth day, he hit pay dirt with a small private hospital in Tarrytown. Why, yes, there is a lady here such as you describe, and she was brought here 4 days ago. May I talk to her, please? Oh, I'm afraid not. What if I come up there? Only hospital staff are allowed in that room. Could you give her a message? I don't know if I should. Be a pal. Tell her I'm the one who held her hand at the disaster, and I'd like to see her again. I'm a reporter for the New York Daily. She can reach me here. Oh, you were there? What a horrible thing. Yeah, it was. Please give her my message. The reporter waited. A day went by, then 2 and 3. He called the hospital again. I'm sorry, sir, but the lady checked out. I have no idea where she went. How could that happen? The lady insisted on it herself, sir. Do you know if she got my message? I couldn't say, sir. Well, thank you anyway, he said. Hee hee, the author chuckled. Boy loses girl. Yes, yes, but I'm running long. I'd better wrap this up. The reporter drank too much that evening. The depth and feeling in those dark green eyes haunted him. Was it the story he was after, he thought? Or was there something else? He was completely confused and drunk when he went to bed. You had a call, a guy in the newsroom said the next morning. The number's on your desk. Thanks. Reporter's head was still squirrely from the night before. He wasn't thinking as he said, "Hello, this is the reporter from the New York Daily returning your call." "Ah, then it is you," a weak voice said. "I recognize the voice." The reporter swallowed hard. His mind cleared in a flash. "Countess, I've been chasing all over trying to find you." "I know. You will come to my apartment for what you Americans call the lunch, no?" "Yes, yes. But tell me, how are you doing?" "I am in some pain from the burns, yes, but I am alive because of you, my friend." "Oh, that! Anyone would have done the same." "But anyone did not. Please come today at 1. She gave directions to her penthouse overlooking Central Park. A butler ushered him into a sunroom filled with plants. The Countess was seated in a wheelchair, her arms and legs heavily bandaged. She held out her right hand, and he took it. He hadn't realized how beautiful she was. She looked at him with the green eyes he remembered, and he shivered. "How good of you to come," she said. "I wouldn't have missed it for anything." "You are a good man. I could see it in your eyes on that day. You deeply cared. When you told me of my husband's fate, there was much pain and caring in your eyes. Yes, you are a good man," she smiled. The reporter felt he must be blushing. "About your husband." "Ah, yes, the Count Giovanni d'Allegre Baptiste de Genovese. He was a powerful man, and he was very generous to me. I stayed away from his business and political dealings except when he wished to show me off." The butler brought food and tea. They talked of the airship, New York, and the reporter's life as they ate. When they were finished, the butler offered the reporter a digestif from an assortment of fine liqueurs. "I cannot partake," said the Countess, "because of the medicines. Regarding the drinking, my husband was drunk when the airship burned, and that is probably what caused his death. But I hope you will continue the story that he died a hero. He deserves as much." "You thought a lot of him then," the reporter said as he got up to leave. "I respected him, yes, but there was no love, no romance. He was not a good man. He did not care. There was no caring in him. Perhaps you will come again." Their eyes met. Ah, boy gets girl back again. The stage is set. There's no reason to go further, thought the author. I will leave the ending to the imagination of the reader. I have succeeded and within my 1,250-word limit. Hooray! Well, what do you think, Jim? It's really fun, Bill. Kind of offbeat. I like it. Thanks. It's the first time I've ever tried writing a story about an author trying to write a story.
And how hard that is. I loved your Countess. Sometimes she sounded kind of like Bela Lugosi. One thought I had, well, obviously this is about the Hindenburg. Do you need to say Lakehurst, New Jersey?
Oh, I don't
know.
Well, if you know it's the Hindenburg, then
Well, I
you
mean,
know
you
it's
don't
like
say
her-
it's the Hindenburg, but it
Well,
seems
it's
obvious to
the
me.
world's biggest
Well, okay.
thing. And
I was just wondering, though, when you see this, I mean, reading it is one thing, seeing it on a paper is quite another, and maybe the part that is the story about the Countess could be in italics, and the other part could be in the regular.
yeah, that
Yeah.
could be.
One other thing, when was the Hindenburg? Was 1934 or something like that?
No, I
35?
think it was 19, wait a minute,
30,
was
well,
after.
37, I think, 36 or
30
37.
Yeah, but it was before the
It
war
was
began.
before World War II.
Okay, so was Camp Dix called Camp Dix then, or was it called Fort Dix? Camp Dix, when
Gee, I don't
the
know. I
war.
looked it up, so
Oh, all
I got
right.
it from somewhere.
Okay, because some of those places I understood were like Fort Dix or Fort
Yeah.
William Henry or Fort so-and-so. And then when the war came and men were mobilized to in
I could look that up
course,
again
they
and make
changed
sure.
it to camp.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay,
Do I have time for a comment?
yeah,
I think it's really interesting to have these different layers of the narrative. The question is, who is controlling whom? I mean, your author voice sounds disappointed with the way the action goes, as if he's not the author, as if he's not really making it up as he goes along, or at least he's critiquing it. Which is kind of interesting, and one can imagine a way in which the character sort of might take more control from the author,
let me ask you.
and have the author disappointed, trying to prevent it from the story from going in that direction, but the characters are taking it in
This
anyway.
is exactly, it's very true to life. I mean, have you written any
Fiction?
fiction?
No, not much.
Well, this
Oh,
is precisely
you need
what
to.
happens with fiction, because you sit there and you say, oh, now what have I done? I got this guy. Or you're writing something else. I mean, I've got a character in the World War I book who's supposed to be peripheral off stage. All of a sudden, he's got dialogue. I mean, like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this happens, this is
Yes.
spot on
Yeah.
for, the interaction between the developing story and the author. Really got it.
Now, can I,
You've written fiction
Bill?
before.
on the first page, instead of spaceship, I would change that to airship.
Yes,
Oh,
good point.
thank you.
Good
That's-
point.
that's a good-
Excellent.
Yeah.
That clinches it.
Also, I might want to change her burns to second degree, because she signs herself out of the hospital after 3 days with third-degree burns. Back then, they wouldn't have allowed that, not
Okay,
back in the
second.
30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing, again, we're back in New York. I don't think she would have given him directions if he's a New Yorker. She just would have given him the address of the penthouse.
Yes,
he
you're
would know how to
absolutely
get
right.
there if it's
Absolutely right.
overlooking Central Park.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. Good.
One thing that I would like to have seen is that the reporter calls the hospital, and on the fourth day he hits pay dirt. So he calls the hospital, then he has to wait another 2 or 3 days. And nowhere in this is he getting anxious or worried. You just say, the reporter waited. Now, I think I would like to see a little bit more anxiety in there, a little bit more frustration, a little bit more counting I don't know. It just strikes me as much too easy. This is important to him, and there's a potential in there because the poor woman has had no romance and she's young and beautiful, and so you don't know where this is going. But so on top of everything else, it just doesn't, I think he needs to be more
Eager.
eager or anxious.
Anxious.
Maybe,
Your
maybe-
choice.
Maybe you could say he had other stories to pursue, that he wasn't just sitting around waiting
Okay.
for this one story. I mean, if he was a reporter, he
Yeah.
probably had more than one project.
Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time.
That's fine.
So, but I would like Claudia to read a little bit.
It's not that long.
No, it isn't. But
Thank you, incidentally.
let's get this into maybe just beginning a little bit of a section that you think is the best part. And Claudia is an expert in ancient Egypt, and has some really good stuff going on here in the third or fourth?
This is an excerpt from the third novel,
Third
The
novel.
Savagery of Set, unpublished as of yet, looking for a publisher. And some of the words are a little difficult because they are ancient Egyptian. Okay, the Sunut apprentice pulled back the damp linen, and Ashayat gingerly picked up the piece of bone. Working it slowly back into place, she pressed it snugly into the hardening acacia paste along the edges of the hole in Ka's skull. She stepped back for Itamun to assess her work. He nodded his approval, and Ashayat proceeded to apply more acacia paste to the entire area to make sure the hole was securely sealed. The Sunut Per Aa covered the wound a second time with linen. Until the paste hardened almost completely, there was nothing more for them to do. Itamun sat at the writing table, scribbling notes about the progress of the surgery, while Kamat removed the clay bowls used for the wine, natron, and the piece of skull. Ashayat came around the bed to check on Nebetaway. Though she was doing her best to be stoic, the princess was pale, trembling, and sobbing softly. Ramesses was stroking her hair and murmuring to her quietly, "Do you wish to be escorted to my chambers to lie down?" "No, father. I want to remain here with Ka." Nebetaway's voice quavered, knowing she could not leave his side, but fearing she would be unable to watch the rest of the procedure. Ashayat held a clay bowl of powdered herbs dissolved in wine and handed it to the princess. Nebetaway drank it and handed the bowl back to the Sunut. After consulting with Itamun and reading what he had written on the scroll, Ashayat was ready to check the acacia paste. She returned to the other side of the bed and pulled back the linen on Ka's skull. Lightly touching the acacia paste, the mixture had hardened nicely, and the piece of bone she had set remained in place. Now she began the slow, painful task of pulling the flesh together over the hardening paste. If she pulled too taut, she could dislodge the piece of bone and would have to begin again. If she worked slowly and deliberately, the paste would harden completely while she worked.
You know, okay, we're down to our last minute, but I do want to say thank you to Claudia for being so patient and waiting. Her research is phenomenal, and to think that in ancient Egypt they did surgery like this with,
They did,
and people survived.
and people
And
survived.
especially Ka, who is the hero of
Hero
the
in the
series.
story.
So we know he's not going to die, but boy, does he have a hard time. Well, thank you all very much for visiting with us and taking a look at the inside workings of the Rising Tide Riders of Harwich. And I want to thank Edmund and Bill and Rachel and Claudia, so nice, Claudia, and Joan for sharing their work with you. And well, that's it till next time. Thank you again for stopping in.